MMORPG is a genre that has a history going back at least 25 years, and some would argue with multi-user dungeons, it goes back even further than that. I've been a hardcore fan of the genre since I first played Ultima Online in 1999, and really, I purchased a copy of UO 2 years before that when the game first came out, but I didn't have access to a computer that could run it in those days, so I spent my time staring at the box, fantasizing what it must be like to go on adventures in Britannia. Over that time, I've seen the genre have three pretty distinct evolutions. The first being the move from the top-down 2D stylings of UO and Realm Online to the third-person 3D style we're used to today, brought on by Meridian 59 and EverQuest. Next up came the change from a more open-world sandbox experience to the theme park style that is so prevalent today, made popular, of course, by World of Warcraft. The latest evolution has been the advent of action combat instead of the classic tab targeting. I suppose you could argue the free-to-play movement was at least a mini-evolution, but either way, in each of these new cases, once the cat was out of the bag, there was no putting it back. 2D MMOs are mostly an afterthought at this point. Sandboxes, while still around, aren't nearly as popular as theme parks, no matter how much people complain about the latter. And action combat has become the norm for new MMO releases. At the current pace, we're about due, or probably a little overdue, for the next evolution, and I think it's going to be Ashes of Creation that delivers it. Now, to set this up, I need to talk for a second about the daily in-game life of a typical MMO player. Let's say this guy is a semi-hardcore player who prefers PvP. He has three main choices. He can play instanced arena-style PvP popular in midi-modern MMOs like WoW, SWTOR, Rift, etc. He could play one of the Realm vs. Realm style PvP games like Guild Wars 2 or Elder Scrolls Online, participating in castle sieges and open warfare. Or lastly, he can play an open-world PvP game where ganking other players is commonplace, like ArcAge or Black Desert Online. All of these options have a pretty hollow feel to them over the long term. Arena PvP has no lasting effect on the world whatsoever. Realm vs. Realm has some lasting impact, but the castles you take today are going to swap ownership about 40 times this week, so what does it really matter? And open world gank fests are only fun until you run off all the noobs, and then it gets boring PvPing the same small group of people all the time. Let's take another random player. This young lady is a casual PvEer. Just like the PvP guy, she has a few options, all of which leave very little impact. She could play in-game raiding style games like World of Warcraft, but as a more casual player, she won't get to see the high-end gear, and even if she did, that boss is going to be there again next week. Killing it now means very little in the long term. She could just putter around in-game killing enemies in the leveling zones, which again does not leave a significant impact, and it loses its appeal rather quickly. Personally, I fall into the category of a hardcore PvEer or raider. I've spent the better part of the last 10 years leading raid teams, obsessing over parse logs, analyzing every detail of boss fights to find an edge, and generally just trying to kill the newest bosses on the hardest difficulty faster than anyone else. And my first look into Ashes of Creation left me a little disappointed in terms of raiding content. A lot of what I believe will be true about raiding in Ashes comes from reading between the lines, viewing the game through a lens that only a hardcore raider could, mixed with some pure speculation. And the general gist of my opinion on raiding in Ashes is that it won't be difficult and it won't be competitive. I won't get into all those reasons right now, but if you would like to hear about them, let me know down in the comments section. I might make a video just covering that. I've spent a few months now agonizing over how hardcore I wanted to go into this game. It seems amazing on the surface, but my fears about the rating were holding me back. And then, a couple of weeks ago, while doing an Ashes podcast, I had something of an epiphany on this topic, and I've been ruminating about it ever since. I knew I wanted to make this video, but I had to get my thoughts right on this topic first. Broken down to its base level, the epiphany was something like this. Raiding, and to a lesser extent Arena and Realm vs. Realm PvP, are stand-ins for real content. It just gives the player busy work to do in endgame, hoping they keep paying that sub fee or buying items off the cash shop. None of it really matters, and it's only meaningful in the most shallow way possible. I actually think the only way to truly do an MMO that would keep the player base engaged and itching to jump back in the game at all times into perpetuity would be by employing full-time game masters. They would create events in real time, make storylines, quests that are not repeatable by every player, attacks on villages and plagues spreading in certain zones, that sort of thing. Just like a D&D DM, they would monitor how the players responded. They could reward people who killed the most enemies or collected the most life-saving herbs, or maybe the guy who organized the best player response, and give them totally rare or totally unique items that there would only be one of in the whole game. Of course, the manpower that would be required to pull something like that off would be immense, and at this point, it seems something like a pipe dream. So, since we can't have that yet, what is the next step? I think the entire node system that Intrepid is developing with Ashes will be the next step. The semi-hardcore PvPer we discussed earlier now can leave a lasting impact on the world by doing more or less the same thing he was doing in the other games, except now he has so much more purpose for doing it. Every arena PvP battle he wins will help his node. Castles can only be sieged monthly, so every bit of progress he contributes towards taking one will last at least a month. Same thing if he's defending the castle. Defending or escorting caravans will have drastic effects on node development. Stephen has stated that if your guild is attacking your node, it will be in your best interest to defend your node against your guild. They have built the game and the node system in specific so that your allegiance to your node is actually above your allegiance to your guild or anything else. And by doing so, they have dramatically shifted what the player will spend his in-game time doing and why he's doing it. It's almost like, personally, I have to strip myself of the label of the hardcore raider. That likely won't even be a thing in this game. But I've come to realize I only raided in these other games because it was the only thing to do at max level. Yeah, you can PvP, I just find raiding to be more meaningful, just as I imagine the PvPers feel the opposite. But either way, you eventually get bored and start asking yourself, why am I even doing this? Why am I logging in every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday night to kill a string of bosses that are just going to be there again next week? Why do I log in every night for 2 hours and queue for PvP matches that don't actually amount to anything? With Ashes, I'll log in because my node needs 1,000 more wood to level up, which is going to unlock a host of new content we didn't have access to today. Or because there's a caravan headed to my rival node, and if it makes it to its destination, they will get ahead of us and they will get that new content. Because we leveled up our node yesterday and there's a new boss to kill. Because our node is under assault and I've spent too much time building and decorating my home to let it go to waste now. The MMO player base is waning, moving into other games and trying out vastly different concepts of what an MMO could be. Games like Ark and Rust and Valheim have taken huge portions of that audience. It's been reported that World of Warcraft has lost half of its subscriber base since the launch of Shadowlands. The formula has become stale, and while a few developers have tried revolutionizing the genre in recent years, so far nothing has stuck. I think Steven and the folks over at Intrepid have the right formula, and in 5 to 10 years, the market will be flooded with MMOs copycatting Ashes, trying to find ever more creative ways to put the player's allegiance over themselves or their guild.